These structure decks are actually insane.
Subscribe.
Today marks the official release of structure deck Albaz Strike. This deck is honestly so good that today should become like a public holiday for budget players or something, because being able to consistently put up 2 to 5 interruptions while having a fully functional side deck and a myriad of additional goodies for cheap is so refreshing. At least until the scalpers take over. But today we're going to be mashing these together and showing you how to pop off with just 3 structure decks. Button. Alright, we're going to have a quick run through of the structure deck here, talk about some of the cards before getting into our deck profile and going through some of the combos. There's a lot of cool stuff in here, but if you want to see like a proper opening, then go check out the other video where we actually opened it for the first time. Alright, so in the structure deck, you get a copy of Tr-Brigade Mercourier. This is a monster negate and also has a search effect when it's banished. A very good card. Springans Kitt searches Branded Fusion, instant 3 of. The Golden Sword Soul, you don't really have space to play this. I mean, it's a cool effect, but it kind of requires already being set up, and if you're already set up, then you don't really need this. So there isn't really much room in the deck to play this. Mirrorjade, obviously one of the best boss monsters. Lubellion, a way of bringing out the boss monster. Branded Fusion, the entire deck revolves around resolving this card, essentially. This card is amazing. Splashable engine, you're going to be seeing this a lot in the competitive metagame. Very good card. Yeah, we definitely play 3 of that in the structure deck. Branded Sword, kind of cool, but doesn't really achieve a whole lot. It requires having multiple branded spells and traps in your graveyard, which you don't really have. So, you know, it's not the best card. We have Branded Retribution, the counter trap. This thing's actually a little awkward. It would be good in the late game when you have multiple fusions in the graveyard, but in the early game, you don't really want to get rid of your Mirrorjade, so it's only good if you have at least 2 fusions set up on turn 1. It also recurs Branded Fusion, so that's quite nice. Fallen of Albaz, obviously the main fusion boy of the deck. You can play 2 or 3 of this, honestly. But yes, it is a mandatory card. Albion is pretty good, counts as Fallen of Albaz in the graveyard or on the field. You don't really special summon it that much, but even in hand, it at worst is just an upstart, and you can trigger one of your branded spells or traps. We have Fleur-de-Lis, doesn't really achieve anything without any other Dogmatica cards to get the negate. Red MD, you basically have a full Dragon Link core in here, but no way to actually utilize it without link monsters, you know, like Striker Dragon and Heavenly Spheres and whatnot. So while it is cool to include those cards, they don't really help you achieve what you're actually trying to achieve. It just gives you a direction that you can sort of build the deck in the future. Kaiju, obviously good going second card. Legionnaire, most of your fusions banish or shuffle back into the deck, so you're not actually going to have a lot of lights and darks in the grave for Legionnaire in the early game at least. So yeah, an unsearchable one-of in the late game, I mean, there's not really any space for it. Radian, very good. Scythe, you can actually Scythe lock your opponent quite easily thanks to Branded Fusion, because you always just dump Scythe to the graveyard. We do play this. Wyver Burster, Collapse Serpent, and Safer, like I said, the Dragon Link engine, very, very good, but in this deck, you don't really have any way to utilize it, so yeah, we can't really play that. Keeper of Dragon Magic, searches Branded Fusion, instant 3 of. Summoner Monk, there is a lot of discard effects in this deck, so having another one in the form of Summoner Monk, I'm not a huge fan of, and you have to discard a spell, so it's a little bit too situational to play in my opinion. Ghost Ogre, obvious. Effect Veiler, obvious. Brotar, kind of cool, but there's nothing you really want to search when you're not playing the Dragon Link engine, so yeah, can't really play that. Branded Lost, amazing card. So when you fusion summon, you get a search for literally like anything in your deck, and it's like Magical Meltdown where your fusion spells activations can't be negated, and on summon of fusion monsters, your opponent can't respond. With your Lubellion and your Albion triggering on fusion summon, they can't respond to it with like Imperm or anything if you have Branded Lost set up, so yeah, very, very good card. Branded in White, another fusion spell. Nowhere near as good as Branded Fusion, but it can maybe come up, so you can like maybe play that, I guess. Branded Bond, sure, some generic fusion stuff that doesn't really achieve what you want it to achieve. It's all just sort of like polymerization type cards, not really that good. Gold Sarc, this can banish the Mercourier from the deck to get an instant search for Springans Kitt or something, for example, so very, very good card. Extravagance, draw 2, why not? You don't really, you're probably only going to resolve this like once or twice in a game, but seeing it in your opening hand is always a very, very good card to see, and you can just discard other copies for all your other discard effects if you do have too many. Called by the Grave, you know, if Branded Fusion gets ashed, you're fucked. Called by the Grave protects you. Dark Ruler no more. Side deck, Screams of the Branded, it's a Monster Reborn, not really worth it. Judgment of the Branded is like a one-sided Raigeki for monsters that have attack higher than a fusion monster you control, so it's a very, very bad Raigeki, but it is is an easily accessible interruption. You can kill things like Borrelsword, Access Code Talker. You know, I can't think of any engines that have high attack off the top of my head right now, but it is a potential interruption, so you play one of these. Necrofusion, like I said, a lot of your fusion materials gets banished and shuffled back, so Necrofusion doesn't really come up as much. Back to the front, you're dumping Artifact Scythe with Branded Fusion. If you see back to the front in your hand as well, that's an instant Scythe lock, baby. Warning point, a lot of people were complaining about this because we didn't get Ice Dragon's Prison, but this is a very, very good card. No material, Fiendish Chain. Also not once per turn, very, very good card. So yeah, 3 of these in the main deck for sure. There can be only 1. You have a lot of dragons. So, you know, side deck at least. Debarrier, side deck, Waken the Dragon. I mean, if you want to be funny, you could side deck this. Sure, but I don't think there's space in the deck for that. Then the extra deck, we have Titaniklad. This is sort of your beater. If you want to go in for the kill, you would probably summon Titaniklad. You don't really summon Brigrand, although you can search for Mercourier if you dump it with the Mirrorjade. Sprind, you just don't really use whatsoever. You can search or summon the Springans Kitt. But yeah, this is probably like the least useful one in the deck. Albion, this is a beast. You can dump this to add Branded Fusion or set the counter trap in the end phase, which is really good. Also, you just mainly go through this with your engine anyway. So yeah, Albion's a very good card. And you have all of the tokens as well. Very cool. All right, let's get into the deck list. Here we go. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of exactly what you were waiting for. The deck list for 3 structure decks. Starting off with the main bread and butter of the deck, we have our triple Branded Fusion. This is absolutely mandatory, followed up by triple Springans Kitt, which can search the Branded Fusion, triple Keeper of Dragon Magic, which discards 1, searches Branded Fusion, and 1 Gold Sarcophagus. So we essentially have 10 copies of Branded Fusion in the deck here. Like I said, you banish Mercourier to search for Kitt, which then searches Branded Fusion. Everything relies on this card. If this gets ashed, then we're in a very, very bad position. We absolutely want this to resolve, and then we pop off from there. If it does get ashed, then hopefully we have some other interruptions in our hand that we can rely on to see us through, and then, you know, maybe get to a second copy of Branded Fusion. Otherwise, maybe try and bait out an Ash so you can then just safely go into the Branded Fusion afterwards. But moving on from there, we have triple Pot of Extravagance to hopefully draw into one of these 10 cards. And we also, this is a bit of a weird one, we're playing triple Albion. And the reason we're playing 3 of this is because if you see it in hand, it's basically just an upstart goblin, which allows us to even more consistently get to one of these 10 cards. You can cut this down to 2 or 1 because, you know, it's not essential, but we can capitalize on both of its effects. It's also a very good discard target because in Grave it works as well. But yeah, triple Albion to max out on the draw power. Obviously, you can't activate the draw effect in hand if you see it with Extravagance, so you would want to discard it and send it into the grave to then activate its grave effect. That's what I've went with for now. Moving on, we have 3 copies of Branded Lost. Very, very underrated card, but seeing this with access to Branded Fusion allows you to extend even further, get more interruptions, and also protects your fusion summoned monsters from getting negated on their summon effects. Also, if you're playing into a board going second and you activate Branded Lost, your Branded Fusion can't get its activation negated by something like a Powerload Savage, so, you know, an additional little boon there. We also have triple Effect Veiler, obviously a generic interruption, triple Ghost Ogre, generic interruption, and triple Warning Point. These are our generic interruptions. If Branded Fusion gets negated by Ash Blossom, we can always fall back on these. And we're also playing triple back to the front with the 1 Artifact Scythe. So typically we'll dump the Scythe with Branded Fusion, and if we see back to the front, we can Scythe lock our opponent. If we don't see back to the front, then, you know, it's not a huge deal. We still go through our combo anyway. 2 copies of Fallen of Albaz. I know that seems a bit weird. I would like to play 3 because going second with the Dark Ruler and the 3 Fallen of Albaz allows you to break your opponent's board a bit easier. But I wasn't 100% sure on what to cut. You could maybe cut like an Albion for the 3rd Albaz, but going first, you don't really go through that many Fallen of Albaz. You shuffle it back into the deck with the Lubellion most of the time anyway. So maybe play 3 of this. For now, we're going for 2. We also have 2 copies of the Tr-Brigade Mercourier. This is a negate interruption. You can search off the Branded Lost, or you can search it off the dumping from the Mirrorjade, and it's also just our target for Gold Sarcophagus to search for the Kitt to get to the Branded Fusion. We also have 1 Called by the Grave. Obviously, Ash is the bane of our life on Branded Fusion. We want to negate that with the Called by. We're on 1 Branded Retribution. If we already have access to Branded Fusion, we're most likely going to search Branded Retribution off of the kit. Most of the time, we will have 2 fusion monsters on the board, Albion and Mirrorjade, so we're not losing board presence with the Branded Retribution, shuffling back the Mirrorjade. We can just shuffle back the Albion. But yeah, Counter Trap for an effect that special summons a monster does destroy as well. The Mercourier doesn't destroy the effect it negates, unfortunately. But this is good against things like Halki Fibrex, for example, and when it's engraved, you can banish it to add back a Branded Spell or Trap. Branded Fusion, for example. Very, very nice. We also have 1 Judgment of the Branded. If Albion is in the grave, we're going to activate this to dump Judgment for cost, and then this will place itself on the bottom of the deck. This just puts an additional interruption on the board, because in the end phase, if this has been sent to the graveyard to activate the effect of Albaz, this is called Albaz while it's in the grave, you can set this, and that is your one-sided Raigeki, like I mentioned before. But you need to be aware that this isn't called Albaz in the hand. So if you're activating the Upstart effect from hand, you don't want to send this. Instead, you want to send the Branded Sword. This doesn't need to be sent to the grave by Fallen of Albaz specifically, so this is a target we send for Albion when it's in hand. And for example, let's say we activate Gold Sarcophagus to banish this to search for this. We can then activate Albion to dump this, draw 1, and then activate this to add this back to hand. A little bit confusing there. We will go into some combos, but yeah, having the 1 Branded Sword as a target for the Albion is quite nice. Gets you a little bit of recursion. Moving on to the extra deck, I think that's fairly simple. We have 3 of all the good ones, Mirrorjade, Lubellion, and Albion, and then we have 2 of the rest, Titaniklad, Sprind, and Brigrand. We want to at least play all of them so that we have multiple options when it comes to fusing our opponent's board away with Fallen of Albaz. Otherwise, we don't mind shuffling like half of these away with Extravagance. But you know, you do get that odd situation where you'll banish all 3 Mirrorjade, which is kind of stinky. Almost an instant loss, actually. Getting into the side deck, we have triple Radian, triple Thunder King, and triple Dark Ruler No More for going second. Then we have triple There Can Be Only One, and triple D-Barrier for going first in situations where we're against decks that get fucked hard by these cards. Overall, very, very good deck. It can do a lot of things if Branded Fusion resolves. If you get ashed on the Branded Fusion, then, you know, cry about it. Alright, getting into some combos here. We're going to start basic and then work our way up to an example hand. So starting off with just Branded Fusion, we're going to activate that, dumping Artifact Scythe and Fallen of Albaz to fusion summon Albion the Branded Dragon. And I'll be honest, this card's not bad. We can banish materials from hand, field, or grave to fusion summon from our extra deck. We're going to banish the Albaz from grave and itself to summon Mirrorjade. That's 1 interruption off of Branded Fusion by itself. Throwing a little discard into the mix here, starting off with Branded Fusion and any other card just to discard. We're going to start off with the Branded Fusion, and this time we're going to send a Dark Monster, Albion the Shrouded Dragon, and Fallen of Albaz to fusion summon Lubellion the Searing Dragon. Similar to Albion, Lubellion can also fusion summon when it's fusion summoned, but this time it requires a discard for cost, and we can shuffle back materials from field, grave, or banished. So we're going to shuffle back the Fallen of Albaz and the Lubellion itself to summon out our Mirrorjade. So that's 1 interruption so far, but Albion in our grave is going to get us to a 2nd interruption. By activating its effect, we can dump a Branded Spell or Trap from the deck for cost to place it back on the bottom of the deck. Now, because its name is Fallen of Albaz in the graveyard, it has been sent to the graveyard for the effect of Fallen of Albaz, so in the end phase we can trigger it to set itself from the grave, giving us 2 interruptions, Mirrorjade and our one-sided Raigeki for 3,000 or higher attack monsters. Next up here we have Branded Fusion plus Branded Lost. So starting off, we're going to activate Branded Lost and then activate Branded Fusion. This time we're going to send Scythe and Fallen of Albaz again to summon out Albion the Branded Dragon. On resolution here, you can order your chainlinks and your opponent can't respond thanks to Branded Lost. So we're going to go chainlink 1 Branded Lost to search, chainlink 2 Albion to banish materials to fusion summon. Like before, we're going to banish the Albaz and the Albion to summon out the Mirrorjade, and then off the Branded Lost, we get a search for Tr-Brigade Mercourier, which is 2 interruptions, a monster negate and a quick effect banish. This one's a bit of a meme combo, but it's still kind of cool. So starting off with Gold Sarcophagus and Albion, we're going to activate Gold Sarcophagus, banish a copy of Tr-Brigade Mercourier, and that's going to trigger the Tr-Brigade Mercourier to get a search for Fallen of Albaz or any monster that mentions it. We're going to search for Springans Kitt. Now we're going to activate the hand effect of Albion the Shrouded Dragon,
dumping a branded spell or trap for cost. We're going to dump the branded sword specifically here because we wouldn't be able to trigger judgment if it's in hand. We place Albion to the bottom and get to draw a card. So like I said, it's basically just an upstart goblin. Normal summoning the Springans Kitt, we activate effect to search a branded spell or trap, searching for the branded fusion and placing our drawn card onto the bottom of the deck. We can then activate the branded fusion, dumping once again Fallen of Albaz, and Artifact Scythe. We're always going to dump the Scythe, there's just no other good light monsters to dump. But yeah, that is once again going to fusion summon Albion the Branded Dragon, which is going to activate its on-summon fusion effect, banishing Fallen of Albaz and itself here to summon out our Mirrorjade. And then finally, we're going to activate the Branded Sword in Graveyard. We probably should have done this a lot earlier, but we're going to add back the Tr-Brigade Mercourier to hand, and that is 2 interruptions off of Albion plus Gold Sarcophagus. It's so cool what this deck can do, man. Now we're going to dive in at the deep end and show you what peak performance looks like. So looking at our starting hand here, we have Ghost Ogre, Effect Veiler back to the front, Albion, and Extravagance. Nothing really playable there. We're going to start off with our Extravagance here, banishing 6 to draw for 2. Hopefully we don't get ashed. We draw into a Branded Fusion plus a Branded Lost. There we go, that's perfect. Activating the Branded Lost here, we're going to follow that up with, of course, the Branded Fusion. And like the combo we literally just shown, we're going to dump a Fallen of Albaz and a Artifact Scythe to fusion summon Albion the Branded Dragon. Now in this particular situation, we're going to go chainlink 1 Albion to fusion summon and chainlink 2 Branded Lost. So the chain resolves backwards, we get a search before we actually banish our materials. We're going to search for a copy of Tr-Brigade Mercourier, which we can then banish from hand for the Albion effect to trigger its search. So banishing the little bird here, which is a dark monster, plus the Albaz, we're able to fusion summon into Lubellion the Searing Dragon. On resolution here, we have more chain links, so chainlink 1 Lubellion to fusion summon and chainlink 2 Tr-Brigade Mercourier to search. We do need to discard for cost on the Lubellion, so we discard the Albion here and search for Kitt off of the Mercourier effect. Resolving the Lubellion, we shuffle itself back, plus the banished Fallen of Albaz, and that gets us our Mirrorjade onto the field. And from here, we actually have quite a few options. Activating the Albion Engrave, we can dump a branded spell or trap to place it on the bottom of the deck. We could go either or here. We can dump the Judgment to set the Raigeki in the end phase, or we can dump Sword to add back the Tr-Brigade Mercourier to hand. I think the Monster Negate typically would be the better interruption, but it does depend on the matchup. So we're going to set back to the front here and go to the end phase, triggering the Judgment to set that from the graveyard. We have the Artifact Scythe in the graveyard for the back to the front, so we have a Scythe Lock, the Banish on the Mirrorjade, Ghost Ogre, and Effect Veiler as well. We actually could have special summoned the Kitt and searched for the counter trap. That would involve swapping out one of our hand traps. So like I said, plenty of options available, and that is 5 interruptions altogether. For 3 structure decks, that's pretty insane. So hopefully this video has been helpful to you. It can absolutely perform decently at a locals, and with that being said, you can expect a brand new from scratch style series with these structure decks on the channel. So if you want to see them in action and how we progress with them from week to week in the future, subscribe and like the video. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.
To slow down, fireplace, do